Violent clashes in Pakistan outside the U.S. consulate in Karachi today. At least 6 people were killed, dozens wounded, we're told. And the protesters reportedly belong to the same sect of Islam as Iran. They were not able to breach the consulate itself, but that incident, of course, highlights the heightened level of concern for American interests around the world since Operation Epic Fury began. Fox's chief national security correspondent Jennifer Griffin joins us live. All right, Jennifer, great to have you here. Thank you for your reporting around the clock. I want to read something from National Review, which makes this point about Iran's attacks in the region. You know, Andy McCarthy writes, saying Iran's already blundered. Its retaliatory strikes included attempted simultaneous strikes against Gulf and other Middle Eastern states that had sought to remain neutral: Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and Jordan. The effect is to push the regimes in these countries into alliance with each other. What do you make of that?
Well, it's very interesting. The Gulf Coordination Council is having an emergency meeting today about this very issue. I think the Iranians did blunder in the sense that Saudi Arabia, UAE, and others had said their airspace couldn't be used by U.S. and Israeli forces for offensive strikes. But as soon as they were attacked, all bets are off, and now those bases are able to be used, the airspace is able to be used, but more importantly, the UAE, for instance, which has had about 167 missiles strike it in the last 24 hours from Iran, they're likely to unleash as well. This has I think what the Iranians are trying to do is that they want to make it so chaotic in the Middle East that people, that they go to the UN and they get a ceasefire earlier, and that they live to survive to fight another day. But they may have miscalculated in this particular case.
I want to ask about something the president said the other night in that overnight video that we got, where he sort of explained what was going on. He said to the members of the IRG, the armed forces, all the police, I say tonight, lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or in the alternative, face certain death. How do you think that message will be received there?
Well, I'm not sure who they're supposed to lay down their weapons to. There's no alternative leadership there. The U.S. is not sending a force in to occupy the country. There are no ground forces there. So who do you hand in your weapons to? Most likely what we'll see happen is that if anyone lays down their weapons and goes back to civilian clothes, they'll fade back into the population, but then they'll regroup. And this is what we see with Iran and what we saw in Iraq. You'll have sleeper cells. You'll have groups that then disrupt things in a different way, in a more asymmetric way. But it's hard to know what that meant exactly.
Yeah, and as you say, protracted conflicts in that region are very, very difficult. Never end well. All right, Jen, thank you very much. Joining us now, Senator Dave McCormick, a combat veteran having served with the 82nd Airborne Division as a paratrooper. He was deployed to the Middle East during the first Gulf War. Senator McCormick retired as a captain, now serves on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and chairs the subcommittee that oversees the Middle East. Welcome back. Good to have you.
How are you?
Okay, so I want to get to the points that your colleague, Senator Tim Kaine, made there. He said there was nothing imminent here. There's no reason for this.
Well, first of all, the president acted completely within his constitutional authority. For 50 years, Democratic presidents and Republican presidents have been making this claim. When President Obama took a military action in Libya, the very same argument was made by President Obama. And by the way, some of those same Democrats that are now saying President Trump is acting out of line were supportive of the Libya operation. So this is completely within his constitutional authority. He briefed the Congress as is required by the War Powers Resolution. He has 60 days, even under that resolution, before any further requirements come into effect. And what we need to focus on now is continuing to support these great young Americans that are carrying out this extraordinary mission. It's early days, but we're a little more than 24 hours in. And I was reflecting on 35 years ago when I was going into Iraq. The military has been magnificent. The coordination between the United States and Israel, 2,000 missions over the last 24 hours, the intel that allowed us to take out the top tier of leadership, the extraordinary coordination and effectiveness. It's something to behold, but we've got a lot of work to do. There's still more work to be done.
We do. And to Senator Kaine's point, he says, listen, we wouldn't be here had President Trump not torn up the deal that had been worked out with Iran that was keeping them in check. He says the enrichment wasn't happening, that they were on track in a way that we could control or know exactly what they were up to.
It's honestly, it's almost laughable. This is all political theater. There is no regime in the world that has more blood on its hands than Iran. It's killed thousands of Americans. Through the previous operation, we took out and set back their nuclear program significantly, but they have thousands of ballistic missiles, ballistic missile launchers. They use those regularly against U.S. forces in the region, against our ally Israel. This is a regime that continues to perpetrate violence throughout the world against Americans. No regime in the last 20 years has killed more Americans than Iran. So there was a moment where the president gave Iran many alternatives for off-ramps. A peaceful resolution to this. You have to get rid of your ballistic missiles. You have to both say you're going to stop. I heard the senator on the previous segment. Right now, part of what we're hearing from our sources in the administration is that Iran was continuing to work on its nuclear program. So this is absolutely justified, and this is an imminent threat to Americans around the region and around the world. And if you have any doubt about that, just look at the sad list of people that have been killed by Iranian proxies.
So where we go now is the big question. What happens? Is there true regime change? Who's waiting in the wings? The New York Times editorial board says this: Mr. Trump's approach to Iran is reckless. His goals are ill-defined. He's failed to line up the international and domestic support that would be necessary to maximize the chances of a successful outcome. He has disregarded both domestic and international law for warfare. Your response? Well,
we talked about the law, so I think, again, that's complete nonsense, and we've got 50 years of Republicans and Democrats saying so. In terms of the mission, the president was very clear. We need to destroy the missiles. We need to destroy the missile launching capability. We need to destroy the Iranian Navy, which can block the Straits of Hormuz, which is a huge deal for the world and for the global economy. And that is a prerequisite of moving forward. And then this lays the predicate for the Iranian people to step up and ultimately take control of their own destiny. And the president's encouraged them to do that. This is the first president that's actually stood with the Iranian people. Go back to President Obama. Those protests on the streets, President Obama, even in his own memoirs, is saying, boy, I wish I would have handled that differently. This president has stood up for the Iranian people. He's given Iran, the leadership, the Ayatollahs, every opportunity for an off-ramp. Sadly, they didn't take it. Now we need to push the moment. We need to stay on offense and eliminate this capability to kill Americans, to kill Israelis, to kill our allies. By the way, attacking our Gulf allies, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, Qatar. I mean, this is a regime that has no allies and pure evil. One final thing I'll say. This is also the regime that gave 57,000 drones to Russia in its battle against Ukraine. This is also a regime that provides 80% of its oil to our adversary, China. This is a bad actor that's got American blood on its hands, and the president's actions are completely constitutional.
So I told you about what the New York Times had to say. Not surprising they'd be critical of this president, as they often are, but there are questions and critics on the right as well about what we're doing, why we're doing this now. The Federalist writes this: you can't tell us one week that we have to strike Iran because the regime is killing protesters, and the next week tell us that we have to strike Iran because the regime is enriching uranium at sites that are supposed to be destroyed. At a certain point, it begins to look like the Trump administration was fishing for a reason to strike Iran.
Well, first, as I said, I think this ballistic missile capability is an ongoing threat to the region. And we have unfortunately, the list of Americans killed to show that. On the Iranian capability, the president's earlier actions has taken back the nuclear capacity quite significantly. So the problem is not that they have nuclear capability. The problem is, despite their promises, they have begun to try to renew and restart their nuclear program. So this did pose a threat to the region. He gave them lots of alternatives for off-ramps. But listen, I mean, I'm someone who looks at those 20 years of war in Iraq. You can't, as an American, not have been scarred by that and worry about entanglement. But I've got a lot of confidence that the president sees that, knows that. He's being very specific about how he deploys military forces. I don't see any likelihood of American boots on the ground. And he keeps putting the pressure and the opportunity back in the hands of the people that can take advantage of it. The Iranian people, this is their path to their destiny, to self-determination.
Are you convinced that they will be able to do that? What are your worries in the transition period? Well,
no, it's going to be challenging. As I said, we're in early days. We're in early days of accomplishing the military mission. I think people should not think there's still thousands of missiles on the ground. We have air superiority, but there's lots of work to be done in terms of taking out those missiles and the manufacturing capability. I'm worried that if we're not careful, we'll lose some of the international support. The very tepid response of the Europeans has been disappointing, to say the least. We're not going to be able to fix Iran. The Iranian people are going to have to step up. It might be some version of of people within the current regime that are able to step up and paint a new day for Iran. It might be an entirely new regime. Yeah. We don't know the future yet, but we need to put them in the best position to find out for themselves.
Yeah, we know the regime's roots obviously run very deep and very broad. Senator, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.